Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Pandemic Interview Series. I'm excited about today. It's going to be a little different than what we've normally done. And that's because today we're going to have two people on the interview with me. The first one, his name is Robert Redfeather. He's a member of the Mescalero Apache tribe. The other gentleman is Robin Price. Robert Redfeather, or he goes by Red, is teaching the martial heritage of the Apache tribe. And I'm really excited to hear about it and learn more about that whole combat system. Robin is one of his main students and instructors. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. So I'm so happy to have you guys here with me. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me and everybody else watching this series. I've been looking forward to it.
Hello, Yate.
Now, Robert Redfeather, you told me when we first met that you don't go by Robert normally. What do you prefer to be called?
Well, my friends call me Red, and people usually don't normally call me Redfeather. Redfeather is my last name. Robert's my first name. The only people who call me by my first name are actually built to it.
So I'll call you Red. Will that be okay?
Appreciate that.
Perfect.
Yes, be fine.
Now, Red, you are a member of the Mescalero Apache tribe. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And
But I'm enrolled with the New Mexico Chiricahua tribe as an enrolled member.
And how many tribes are there in the Apache Nation? And please forgive me because I don't know, and this is interesting for me.
Sure. There's about 30.
Wow.
Yeah, 30 clans. That's a lot.
And what I find really interesting from your website and from reading up on you as well is one of the things I've been looking forward to with this is that Geronimo was Apache, right? And these are the stories that we heard, at least I heard growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, at our age, growing up, we played cowboys and Indians. And so we got to be both, and Geronimo was one of the main characters. And I can't wait to hear about this whole system.
Well, Geronimo was a Chiricahua Apache.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and he was pretty much a medicine man.
Was he?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't a chief, but
How
people
did he
did follow him.
Okay. How did he fall into the role of war leader then, if he was a medicine man?
Well, that would have to be probably during Choquis, during that time when Choquis wanted peace. You can correct me too, because Robin's pretty good about history as well. So they were having a treaty treaty, and Geronimo wouldn't go for that. And he took men who would follow him and did not want peace. So they just took their bands and broke apart. That's what they did.
Okay.
And Geronimo took the name, well, his name was actually the one who yawns. So he took the name Geronimo, what the Mexicans would call him. So he took that name. So before the Spanish people would get killed by the natives, they would do a prayer, and it was Saint Geronimo. So that's how
Saint Jerome.
Saint Jerome, thank you.
Okay.
And that's how he got that name Geronimo.
Okay. Oh, it's fascinating.
It's amazing.
So for a lot of native tribes, they didn't necessarily have chiefs of different things so much as if you were charismatic, you could become a leader. If you got people to follow you and you wanted to go do something, then you kind of became that war leader to go on raids and stuff. And if you were successful, then more people would follow you.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's kind of like, to tie it to something I'm more used to thinking about, it would be like a leader of a ship in Viking times.
Raiding parties. For
Yeah, okay, you can look at it that
Hey,
way.
I'm successful war leader, so you guys follow me, or I'm a successful trader, follow me, and we'll all be successful.
There's a little bit more in that, you know,
Well,
not to get deep into it, but yes. Yeah.
Cool.
He would usually follow a leader who took care of his man, who cared about his man, who didn't get nobody really killed, and was almost invincible. And then when one leader would get killed and shot, of course, he would pick a new leader and go on their merry way.
Yeah, there's some interesting things I read on your website, which I want to say for the video, there will be a link to Red's website in the description, as well as your books, so people can find those.
Thank you.
Now, you said you're registered in New Mexico, and that's where your family is from?
My family is from California. My dad's parents are from New Mexico, towards that reservation out there with the Mescaleros. But how would you say that word? Genealogy?
Oh, genealogy.
Yeah, I can never say that word correctly. It splits up the family there, pretty much.
As you know, with most family trees, it spreads out quite a bit. The Red actually has family in Texas, New Mexico,
Right.
Mexico, because that was the area that the Apache worked. So
Right.
he has relatives all over the place.
Yeah.
Especially in Texas, the Apaches in Texas, which is pretty cool.
Lupon.
Yeah, Lupon Apache.
Okay, yeah, because the borders as we know them didn't exist at that time.
That's correctly. They didn't. Actually, California was part of Mexico at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting, cool. Red, you mentioned that you're a member of the Mescalero tribe of Apache. How did you track your background, your DNA, to find that tribe?
Good question. Actually, Robin's wife, she's a doctor, and she works, has a business of DNA.
And a lovely person.
Yeah.
Yes, she is. Kimmy.
So she's been doing genetic and forensic genealogy for about 8 years, and just started a new business called DNAsleuth.com.
Oh, congratulations to her.
DNA Sleuth LLC.
Yeah.
And Red had asked for help in finding his family tree so that he could prove his lineage, basically. And so she did that, and then Red took it and expanded it even further.
She's amazing. She's really amazing. And what people get confused when they do their DNA and they find out they're Native American or indigenous, right? They don't know what to do with it. They go, okay, now I'm Native. What do I do? Do I go to the reservation and say, hey, I'm Native? It doesn't work that way. Because a lot of tribes will not take the DNA, because if you don't follow the customs, or you don't go to powwows, and you don't live on the res, and you don't learn about the culture, especially the language, they're never going to accept you. So once you find out you are Native, and you can prove, especially the DNA, the DNA doesn't tell you what tribe you belong to, unless you know what tribe you belong to, or you'll have an idea, right? Or what state you're from, then you can find it. So what she did, she found people in my family tree I didn't even know I had. So we found cousins were Mescalero Apache. We found cousins were Apache from Texas. So and then I confirmed it with them. I gave them a call. Some wouldn't call me. Some wrote to me first, and we talked on the phone for hours and hours. And it worked to that. Then I talked to the Chiricahua. They accepted me, and now I'm a enrolled member into the Chawa Apache tribe in New Mexico, which is a blessing. It's way overdue, you know. I was just fortunate. I knew the culture from my grandparents and wrote a book about it and lived on the reservations, and I lived a life. So that helped a great deal, besides just finding out you're this much Native.
You lived on the reservation?
I did in Arizona. I lived in Arizona on the reservation. I lived with a bunch of Navajos. She adopted me. She came, my grandmother. I lived by Four Corners. It's actually called Malaman Valley. And it's a small town called Cayente. Some people call it K-Town. So I grew up there, and I tried to learn the Navajo language and learn their customs. They're not too far from the Apache customs. They're a little bit different. They accepted me with open arms, and I lived there for about 4 years. By that time, I was using the nickname JT. Everybody just called me JT, because I had a really close friend of mine. His name was John. He was in the He was in the army during the Korean War, and when he passed away, he was like my dad. So I kind of took his name.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another question I have, speaking of the tribes, is on your website, you have something written about leg coverings that go up to the knee.
Oh, okay. You're talking about Apache boots, moccasins.
Are they moccasins or are
We
they?
are. I'm gonna step away. I'll bring them to you.
Because I know you had mentioned you spend a lot of time barefoot as well.
I do. It's to be grounded. The Patchy Moccasin looks like this, which is pretty cool. You have the toe here. It's for cactus needles, so they don't go into the toe itself.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes people will put peyote and grind it and put it in the circle for blessing when you walk on Mother Earth. It's also to remind you to always go home because it's in a circle. A lot of meaning behind it besides protecting your toes. It's out of a hard, cow rawhide. Thank you. And it's short for during the summer, and then during the winter, it's pulled up. You just pull them up, and it goes high all the way to the D, so you can protect from cactus and brush when you're hiding or during the winter.
Right.
So sometimes you'll see it goes really baggy, or you use something to tie it off so it don't slip, and you would have something to tie it off here too so it stays on as well. And it's very hard on the bottom.
Okay.
So these are worn not by every Apache, by Chiricahuas or Mescalero Apaches, or just somebody. Here's an example. Somebody told me one day, Mescaleros never wore these type of moccasin boots. I said, oh, really? So you're saying if I never marry a Chiricahua woman, you don't think she's going to make these moccasin boots for me? And I'm going to tell her, no, I cannot wear them because I'm a Mescalero? So yes, you would definitely wear these moccasin boots.
Okay. Did they also, were the boots standalone, or did they also sometimes use like a material to wrap around the foreleg?
No, it's just strictly one size. I guess you could wrap another layer on there, but I don't see the purpose of that.
No, I meant instead of the high boot. So just the
Oh,
low.
would it be short, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes,
And
of course,
leg
it's short.
wrap.
You can have it short or long. Sometimes it'll be bright yellow, and that's for ceremonies or for special dancing, or you would just have it basically this color for everyday use.
Okay.
I do wear them occasionally certain places, and I get a lot of stares. People think I'm a leprechaun or a fairy on that. But when you first get your moccasin boots, there's a blanket laid out, and it looks like a cross. It's for north, south, west, and east. You would put the child in the middle of the blankets, and of course, you would have a blessing with corn pollen. You put on your head and your shoulders and your hand, and then on your moccasins to bless when you walk on Mother Earth. So everything we do, we have a blessing. So you just don't put the moccasin on and then walk on it. There's certain traditions you do first before you just put them on.
That's really interesting. I did notice on your website that it was also talking about the importance of the circle and everything returning home.
Mm-hmm. This is true. That's more like that's like the yin yang.
Yeah.
Everything breaks apart from north, south, west, and even the colors mean certain things. And Robin's learning about that too now. I was teaching them some things, what the color means, and iron and fire and water, all the different stuff. So there's a lot of meaning behind it and what you use it for and what teacher you have. Everybody has a different teacher. Now the basic colors is the yellow, black, red, and white. Everybody seems to use that, but Apache people, our people, will have black. The red could be blue, it could be green or tan brown. It all depends what tribe and what they're using it for their colors. Colors are very important to the native tribes. It's a way of marking your property in certain cultures.
It's one of the things I really enjoy about doing these is I learn about different cultural ideas and the differences between them, but then also just how many similarities there are, even though they're different words, the amount of similarities, and it's fascinating.
I like the Vikings, the way they live. They live in the forest. What are those people called?
Me too.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Norsemen.
There you go. They're pretty cool.
Um, can you give us an idea of what Apache combat is about? You had said just a moment ago that a good leader cares for his men and doesn't waste them, which is a good leader no matter where you're from or when you're from. But can you tell us a little bit about the Apache combat system?
Well, you have to be more precise than that. Are you talking about the word Maganza?
I'm talking, well, I'm thinking about what you're teaching with the knife and other things that you teach. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, on the combat. Sure. Well, it's a system. Well, it's Maganza is like playing chess. What it is you want to lure the troops a certain way to outflank the troops, the way of fighting. So if you're camping out here, you have a false camp here. So the enemy, the cavalry will come down and attack the camp. Well, there will be nobody there. They would be up higher and then shoot them from below.
Okay.
So they're pretty smart about that. So it's pretty much directing your enemy where you want them to be. Guerrilla warfare. I think that's pretty much what you're talking about. I don't know if you actually want to know about the Apache knife fighting system itself or just the guerrilla warfare.
Well, when I was able to take Robin's class at SoCal Sword Fight, where we met, Robin, you were telling me a little bit about the philosophy of the guerrilla warfare, but also the knife fighting and the way it's tied directly into the idea of nature that you live in.
So think of any tribe wants to not lose members of the tribe because they're all important. So they're not going to stand and do a like European dueling. They're not going to come out and challenge you to a duel and then fight.
That's for sure.
It's hit and run. So
Exactly right.
if the soldiers they're ready to fight, they're going to do something where they can just cut him as they're running past because another person will be coming up behind to get another cut in or another stab in. So it's very, very hit and run. They want to do stuff from cover. They're not going to
out in the open.
Yeah, that's a good way to die.
After all, there weren't no hospitals in the desert.
Yeah, that's the truth. Which is one of the things that created such havoc during the American Revolution with the redcoats, that whole idea of hit and run.
Right, because the native or the Americans that had been living here for quite a while had a lot of interaction with the native tribes there and picked up a lot of same type of habits of hunting and fighting. So like Rogers Rangers,
Yep.
people like that, they called it skulking or just going Indian. And so when the British would come with their traditional ones, marching out in front, and the Americans would just pick them off from the trees.
Yeah.
So same type of thing.
After all, we were fighting the French, the Spanish, and the Mexicans during that time.
Yeah.
And then after Mexico sold Mexico to the United States, and then of course we started fighting the Americans from there.
So, unfortunately, lots of practice in that warfare.
Oh yes.
On your website, you mentioned that there's a philosophy and an attitude towards pain in the Apache thought process. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, it's just a way of life. Imagine yourself, you're in the forest and then the troops show up and you hide in the branches and you start shooting at you because they don't know exactly where you're at. And then they shot one of us, and if you scream out, everybody would die. So you take that pain. If you were to get shot, you would close up your mouth, wouldn't say anything, you would take the pain. So nobody would get killed. So you're saving the tribe members, but not yelling out. So as children, you get hit with twigs, you hit yourself with sticks and twigs for the pain, and then you would go barefooted a lot. You would run in the snow and run in the mountains, just to endurance, your breathing, and the pain was another way of showing good character.
Hmm. Okay, so not only was it uh, uh, a way of protecting your tribe members, your family members, but it sounds like it was also a rite of passage.
And
If,
also condition the body as well. I
yeah,
think of it as the Chinese did the same thing when they were conditioning their body with the wooden dummies. You know, they get their forearms tough, and we did the same thing. We'd get our arms tough, our legs tough. It'd be like leather. I think you probably heard that phrase before. And they say some natives have skin like leather.
it's because they spend so much time purposely developing that ability.
Probably purposely being outside and forced being on the move out in the sun, not because we really wanted to.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You look at you know, even if you're into lifting weights and stuff like that, we're not as hard as our ancestors.
Yeah.
We did physical labor all day long. And so if you're living out in the wild, where you have to go out every day to hunt your meals and work on things and train for fighting, you're going to, your body is going to be conditioned a lot more, and it's like pain. Okay, big deal.
A true warrior always learns how to deal with pain. A true warrior knows that's part of his training. It just comes with the training.
Right.
No pain, no gain.
Or like the SEALs, bleed now so you don't bleed later.
Yeah.
Yep.
Blood clogs.
Um, how do you think that rite of passage, that hardening of the body, how do you think that came into play and affected the combat between the Mexican army, the U.S. Army, and the tribe, and that difference between the soldiers of the tribe versus the soldiers of the army?
But that's simple. Soldiers were getting paid. We weren't getting paid. We were just trying to survive. We didn't have a choice at it. Soldiers have a choice. It was an everyday occurrence for us dealing with death and with pain and grief and hunger, of course.
Yeah. So your people were used to being hungry, used to hardship, used to
Yeah.
the extreme weather. And if you're a soldier and you're used to getting 3 meals a day and all the water you wanted
And breaks.
and breaks,
As an Apache, there was no breaks.
Yeah.
Always on the move, always on the go. But you got to be smart about it.
they would just outlast the soldiers.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's an interesting thought. When I'm training people in armored combat and we're in full suits of armor, I tell them often, you need to work on your skills, you need to work on your techniques, but when you're wearing all that kit, often you're going to win if you can just last longer than the other guy.
Stamina. Yep, I
Yeah.
believe that. It's all in the legs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the lungs.
In the lungs. Definitely the lungs.
How do you think that attitude towards hardening and pain and just having to do it, not just for everyday survival, but also to protect your family members, was common amongst other tribes as well?
Yes, it was so common you didn't even think about it. It was just part of everyday living. You know, it's not like you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to be hurting today, so I'm going to do this. You don't think that. You just do it.
Yeah, you just get up and go.
Yep, true warrior.
So you teach the system from your tribe. Who taught you the combat system?
Well, that's a long story. Are you ready for this?
All right, let's lay it on us.
Okay. Well, I was about 15 years old, and I got invited to go to a party near the neighborhood. This was the city of Santa Ana. So I went to this party with a girl. I don't remember her name. And her ex-boyfriend was picking on her because I showed up there with her at the party. And of course, like any gentleman will stick up for the girl, and I did. And he pushed me, and he goes, "Where are you from? Who are you?" I said, "I'm Apache." And he goes, "I'm Crow." And then I kind of laughed. And then I went to kick him, did a roundhouse kick. And when I did a roundhouse kick, he stabbed my foot. I didn't even see the knife come out because as he pushed me, that's when I went for the kick, and that's when he stabbed me. So he had time to take the knife out to actually stab my foot. After that, I limped home. Then from when I went to the house, I went to the doctor. Then from the doctor, I came back home. My grandfather saw me limping in the living room. He goes, "What happened to you?" And I told him the story, and he goes, he laughed, and he laughed. He goes, "He's saying he's from Crow Village. It's a gang." That's what he meant when he said he was a Crow.
Oh.
I started a lot because I thought he meant he was a Crow Indian.
Yeah.
And that's why the guy was mad at me because I said I was an Apache. Probably had no idea what I was talking about. And my grandfather said, "It's the time you learn our ways." So he went out to the backyard. And the first thing he did, he laid me down on the ground. And we looked at the tree and he told me a story. And after the story, we got up and then he did some smudging. Then after that, he took 2 tree branches and broke them in half. And then he told me to stab him. I laughed at him. I said, "What? You will stab me? I'm not going to stab you. He's my grandfather, right? Where's the respect there?" And he hit me on the head. I got mad. He hit me on the leg. I got mad. He hit me on the head again. So I went, I lunged at him. He hit my hand and I go, "What is he doing?" I mean, I took martial arts ever since I was 5 years old. And he was all over me. And he was an old man. You know, I'm sure he was probably in his 50s. But when you're a kid, you think everybody's old, right?
Right.
And then he asked me if I wanted to learn. I said yes. And then that's how it started from there. He started teaching me. And then he worked as a construction worker with cement. So his arms were pretty, you know, pretty strong. He was pretty strong for his age. And then one day he was at work and I was in the backyard hitting the war post with my knife. And my grandma's in the backyard hanging up clothes in the backyard. And she goes, "You're doing it wrong." I started to laugh. I snickered. And she was getting more and more upset with me. And she kept saying, "You're doing it wrong. You don't know what you're talking about." And she smacked me on the head with a wooden spoon. And she goes, "Who do you think taught your grandfather?" And I went, "What?" So she taught my grandfather for during World War II so he would come back home. So she taught him. And that's how it started. So I would learn from both. My grandmother always had a knife on her apron, because there was a lot of cactus. We grew up on the farm, you know, horses and pigs and cactus. So she had the knife with her all the time. And never down on me why she carried that knife. I just was used to seeing her with it.
Just a part of her everyday clothing.
Yep, just part of life.
That's amazing. I love the fact that you learned this combat art from your grandmother, because it goes against what we think,
This
all
is
right? And it just shows how strong our women are.
This is true. I learned, my grandmother taught me all the secrets pretty much are with the women. Men are always trying to find out history, so they always ask men, but they don't consider asking women.
Yeah.
And the women, especially with the Apache women, knew a lot of secrets, a lot of culture, but if the men were dying off, who would teach the kids?
Mm.
It would be the grandparents. Would be teaching the ways, or
Right.
passing something on. Well, my grandmother always told me, we're loving people. We are people. We're not animals. We're loving people. Maybe other people might think that way. Apache means the enemy. We're not the enemy. We're the ne. We are the people.
So who gave the tribe the name Apache? Yourselves or someone else?
No, that's a Zuni word for enemy. So the Zunis, the first enemy of the Zunis was the Navajo. So the Navajos were called the Apaches. So every time we see a Navajo, we call them brother because they were the first Apache. And then when we came in, we were called Apache. We were the enemy, and it stuck. So there's about 30 Apache native tribes, but everybody has their own name, like Chiricahua Apache, like Mountain Apache, Mescalero Apache, and so forth, and Lapao Apache.
That's really interesting.
What are you going to say, Robin?
Oh, the Navajo and the Apache are related,
Yes.
and the Navajo language and the
Basque.
western band of Apache, the language is very similar, so they can understand each other.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, with being Apache and living in Mexico, you learn different languages. You learn how to speak French, Spanish, English, because you're trading a lot with people back then.
Right.
Right.
Wow. Uh, so that's a fascinating story about how you learned the Apache art. Have you studied other martial arts systems?
Of course, I've been doing martial arts since I was 5 years old. You know, I did judo. Judo was my very first art I learned was judo. Then after judo, it was Shotokan, then it was Taekwondo, a lot of Japanese arts. And then when I got a little older, it got into when I met my grandfather's best friend, it was Kung Fu. And I met him at the age of 5. So even though I was studying Kung Fu, I was still doing other arts. He would let me do that as long as I would master his art first. So I was only allowed to master one art, even though I was studying others.
Okay.
So I would only get like a brown belt or green belt in the other styles, and then I would move on. It was just to learn the ABCs,
Mm-hmm.
that style. So if I fought somebody, I knew exactly what they were trying to do.
Nice.
It's not so strange as this system is better than the other system. It actually has to do with the person, the character. You know, some people are talented than other people when it comes to fighting. It's not so much the art itself.
It's that conversation between two people, but instead of verbally, it's physically, and you can't respond to the question correctly unless you understand the dialect or the language that they're speaking to you.
That is correct. Right.
That's why I like to describe that idea.
So it's very important to me people realize there's no martial arts in Apache knife. There's no Japanese, there's no Lama, there's no Filipino on Apache knife. Apache knife is Apache knife. It's a native art. And then once you take a class with me and you come to a seminar, you realize there isn't. It's very direct, very easy, and complex.
Most, I've noticed that studying most things that at first appear complex are fairly easy, and things that appear fairly easy are really complex. So it's never that straight line all the way through your training.
That's true. I mean, when Robin first started with me, I must have yelled at him, I think, what, every day. Because not, he had bad habits, but then again, you have to know when to use those bad habits. And that's what he learned, when to use, right?
Yeah. So,
So,
you know, if you, I've been doing martial arts a long time, so I have habits from different systems that don't work as well doing Apache knife. So I had to learn to adapt and change certain things that I did to become better at Apache knife. So it's, you know, he talks about no martial arts, and we kid him about this all the time. Apache knife is a martial art, but it doesn't have influences from other martial arts.
that's correct.
Right.
So it's a personal joke between him and I.
What, I was looking at your shirt while you were talking, Robin, and what was the preferred knife for this style?
Sharp and pointy.
Well, back then, we did have knives from traders,
Uh-huh.
metal. We used knives out of wagon wheels. We would take that and we would make a knife out of it. We would take swords. We would make a spear and a knife off that. You would use stone. You would use rock. You would use deer horns. Anything sharp to make a knife. And then, of course, we had the modern knife. We even had some Apaches who were blacksmiths because they lived in town in Mexico, in Chihuahua. In Chihuahua, there's a lot of Apaches.
Okay.
And that goes back to saying a lot of people think Apaches are like what?
Stone Age.
Like Stone Age. And we're not. They're very intelligent people.
No, actually, the way I was, the way I was actually, the question I'd like to ask is, was it a buoy style? Was it a spear point? Was it a drop point? What style of knife?
That goes to the person and personality
Okay.
of the person who's wielding the blade, what they like. You,
Okay.
you can't say you had this one particular knife for every tribe.
Right.
I mean, you would use what was available at the time or what you like. I personally like a really good knife with a guard on it, which is very important to me, especially if it has a curve to it. Now, when I teach American troops, we use the K-bar, because that's what they're issued with.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the standard, you know, the guard here, and then it's rounded at the end. so it's easy to pull out once it's in. So you need something to stop your hand from going through, and you need something around a curve so you can pull out. You know, so that's very important. And then of course you want the distance so you don't have to fight that close. And it has an uppercut so you can cut up and down. So it's always good to have a double blade or a single blade. It all depends what you're going to use it for. A matter of preference.
All right. Okay. That makes perfect sense. And when you say single or double, what you're going to use it for, it makes me think about the difference between the K-bar versus the EK.
Okay.
One
Because
is for,
Geronimo, he had a double blade on his knife, Geronimo. He had like almost like a dagger in his knife. He had blades on both sides and was pointing on the top like a spearhead.
okay, cool.
And he had a guard as well. It was a really good,
Like a short Arkansas toothpick.
yeah, pretty much. Really
Gotcha.
good blade.
Yeah, because if you look at you know, he talks about, because the Apache have been fighting the Spanish for hundreds of years, and so it all depends on what they got off of their enemy, what became a trade item. So if you look at the different types of trade knives, they look, if you know what a camp knife is, so that would have been a popular knife because that would have been something that they traded for different things.
Mm-hmm.
But as he said, as time goes on, it's like, oh, I like this knife better than this knife. This fits me better.
Right.
And you know, even an obsidian knife, if you know how to use it, how sharp they are. If you're skinning
Yes, they are.
the obsidian works better than anything.
Right. So when I train people for the very first time, I make sure it's this knife. But when I train the advanced class, I make sure I train them with this knife. It's about 4 inches long, and that's like a pocket knife.
Those terrify me.
Because it has to force you to check and fight closer,
Yeah.
a lot closer to your enemy. So everybody prefers this one,
Or the buoy.
or the buoy. But when you get really good, you're going to start wearing. You start using this one. It's about 4 or 5 inches long. But that's the size of a pocket knife. It's not so much intimidation when it's in your pocket.
Yeah. That style scares me the most because you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it so scary,
That's
especially
correct.
when you're moving around. I've been fortunate enough to take classes with Robin, but I haven't done it with you yet, Red. But when you're teaching movements of the blade, how are those positions, those movements named or conceived of in the Apache system?
Okay. Well, when I was first learning with my grandparents, I would ask them, because I'm a martial art background, I would ask them, what's this called? He would hit me on the head. He goes, there's no name, just do it. And I would snicker and go, there's no name. He goes, no, just do it this way. So I would do it this way. And then he would say, okay, well, this one's called the downward wind because it moves, there's a story. So each movement, there's a story that goes with it. Like in like 4 corners, like north, south, west, and east, you would have the winds coming from all sides when they get to the center of the earth. They're spiritual, like a magical realm. Realm?
Realm.
Thank you. There's certain words I cannot say. So not only is it magical and mystical in religion, so those words are put into the knife training itself. And then I took it was recommended by my grandparents, my grandmother, and my grandfather to do a church meeting. I'm trying not to say certain words. So I would go to a peyote meeting, a church meeting, and then I would learn how to advance my skills even more to get guidance from the rope man or medicine man on that part there. I don't want to talk about religion too much because that's what it gets into. It kind of gets into the religion way of learning. And then I don't want to scare people away, so I don't talk about that part, how we get our names and stuff.
Okay.
That's how we came up with the names.
Very cool. Very cool. Whether the term religion or philosophy, every system has it and supports it and builds upon it. And,
well, like wind gods. If I say wind gods, people go, excuse me?
Yeah.
So that's how you have the downward wind, you have the upward wind, you fight like the wind, you move like the wind. The guys from the wind is going to help you survive and fight, move like the wind. And
Right.
once I used to move like the wind, but now I walk as a turtle.
And again, that comes to the being out in nature all the time
Mhm.
versus a lot of the Western culture, which is always indoors.
Yeah,
And so
that's
we're
true.
not necessarily seeing that kind of thing or making those associations.
Mhm. So when we do a training, I like to do it outdoors a lot. We train at a park where I've gone to since I started teaching. And it's always at the same park. I like the trees there. I like the open space, more with nature that way. And people
Yeah.
hear the birds, they see the hawk every
Self-
now and then. So it's pretty cool.
Although we're trying to get it set up so that we actually have a school to teach out of.
Yeah,
But
because when it rains a lot, the weather's just way too hot. It makes it kind of difficult to train. But for instance, when I used to train in Arkansas, I would train troops and people in the snow and in the rain. I wouldn't cancel a class because you have people coming from all over paying for their flight, the hotel room. So I'm not going to cancel on them. But and then we even did some training in the stream one time when there was a bunch of rocks. So the whole idea was to get people used to their environment, the way they're going to fight with a knife. I even put people in the swimming pool so they know it's totally different, but it's easy to learn it too that way. Quicker to move. And the military people really like the training because it's simple and it's not complex and it has to deal with pain. And troops remember pain and he won't forget.
Yeah, there is truth in pain. There is no doubt about that. You had mentioned a little bit earlier that you also teach military personnel. How is the system, the Apache system that you teach, a good match for the military in their combat needs? And then I have a follow-up question when you're done with that one.
Okay. Um, there was a young man named Tanner Nystrom. He was a sergeant in the Marine Corps here in California. And he had a seminar in my school, and they were fighting, and I was snickering, and he asked me if I can do better. I said, I guess. So I fought a couple of people, and of course I beat them. And they wanted to know what it was called. And they said, well, it's Apache knife fighting. And they go, well, why don't you teach it? I go, why would I teach people to kill? I'm a martial artist, I'm a Buddhist, I'm not going to teach that. So he said, but you'll be saving lives. This was around 9/11 during the time that happened. So he would come to my school like every other day from the base. And then he became a student of mine and just to taught me to teach the American troops. And one day I gave in. I said, yeah, I'll teach the Marines. I'll teach them for free. So I went down there and taught about 30 Marines. I fought each one of them. So I fought each one about a minute, maybe 2 minutes a person. And then a lot of people were getting bruised up, banged up the way I was teaching them. The sergeant would come by, the lieutenant would come by and say, outstanding, they liked the training. Everybody wanted to play, of course. And then after that, they kept inviting me back. And they liked it because it was simple, it was direct, easy on the feet work. Um, and it was, I hate to use that word, pretty much about killing.
Yeah.
And that's what they liked about it. They used to, as a government contractor, they would hire other martial, I won't say what martial arts, they would hire a martial art person, and all they would teach the troops for an hour is how to meditate. So, of course, the troops would get mad, they lose their money, they wasted their money. So now what they do is now they'll have somebody come in and do a seminar for free. And then if they like what they saw, if you're a government contractor, they would hire them.
Yeah.
Now they have a system called gliding into the room when they clear a room. And it's the same way the way we knife fight, we glide, we move our feet really a lot because all we do is walk. And that messes everybody up in knife fighting is the walking because everybody's used to going to a left ball or right ball or a fighting stance or a fencing stance. It's hard for people to realize all you have to do is walk. So as I'm stabbing you, I'm actually walking out at the same time, and then you're swinging, I'm not there.
Right.
So it's kind of like commenting you. And then when you think I'm going to come in, you're going to react. And as you react, I move around you. Then I go for a cut, and then I go this direction. So we don't hold our ground. We're constantly moving. And the other reason why the Marines like it, because once you're cutting and stabbing, you're moving away from them so the other troops can shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in the way. Because there's too much going on when you're in warfare. I know I'm getting kind of off base, but
No, that's a great answer, especially from where I come from, because the way I tell everybody here at my school is, if you're here, you need to be here behind them, not in front of them, because bad things happen when you're in front of somebody who means you harm. The best place to be is behind them.
right. And it's not bad for a martial art person to hold the ground when they don't have a weapon. But when you got a weapon, you don't want to hold your ground. Because with a knife, you can't shake it off. You don't have a second chance.
Yeah.
So they're thinking about, if I move to the side, I still can fight them. No, you're still holding your ground. You need to move to the side and keep going, because a person's going to swing on you or move on you or go for your legs. You're still too close to that person.
One of the things, and I think we've talked about this, Robin, is I like to tell people, make sure you don't train falsely. You know, I'm not going to throw a punch and leave it there for you to do 32 actions on, because I've yet to have an opponent throw a punch or a kick or stab me and just leave their weapon there. And so we need to constantly move.
It's like the some, you know, where you punch and then the guy does 50 techniques on you while you're holding your arm out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way in real life.
I've asked people to do that when I'm fighting them, and they've yet to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I teach when we're knife fighting, there's like I go, you go. It's, you want to learn about movement.
Yeah.
Movement is very important. So when I'm just here and I lunge at you with a knife, then you know I'm ready to fight you. So they're going on movement a lot. So you really have to pay attention on body language.
Yeah.
Body language is very important when it comes to affection.
Which is one of my favorite things. Robin knows I love body language and using it.
Mm-hmm.
So this actually leads me perfectly into my follow-up question for you. The military has been phasing out bayonets. I know a lot of people still carry them. I've heard that over in the Middle East, tomahawks have become popular amongst the forces again as well.
Mm-hmm.
But with the military phasing out bayonets and other knives as issue weapons, is that affecting the amount of people coming to train with you?
No, it doesn't, because a lot of people will carry their own personal knives to the battle. They'll buy and purchase or something, have something custom for them. As long as they have the issue blade with them from the military, they're good to go.
Okay.
But if you don't have that with you, sure, you're going to get in trouble, because it's part of the uniform, it's part of your equipment. You're going to have that. But a lot of people carry the axe because it's intimidation of the hands and windows and so forth for the enemy. And it's a really good weapon to have, is that tomahawk.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's an amazing tool. What was that, Robin?
I said it's very good for CQB, close quarter combat.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. But the only thing is, you got to make sure you have the right axe, because if you stick it into the body, it's going to be hard to take out. You have to go to your second weapon. Besides, if you use the knife, you know something's really gone wrong. You know, you want to stick to your rifle pretty much. Yeah.
Although, with that being said, several years ago, I remember reading an article about the first confirmed kill with an MRE spork.
Was it at a trench?
It was in a house.
In the house? Okay.
And everything was expended, and the wrestle started, and knife gone, and he just happened to have his MRE spork in his pocket.
Hey, whatever you got.
Yeah, it works that way, because when you're that close, especially on the ground, you're going to go for your knife. Well, that's why a lot of people will carry the knife here, or carry it to the side, or carry it in their boot, because they're comfortable pulling it out. If they're smart, they would have two knives: a small pocket knife for cutting little things, and of course your big knife for actually just for taking someone's life. You want it to be sharp all the time.
Red, you are not only a martial artist and a teacher, but you've also done work in movies as an actor and a consultant.
This is
How did you start working as a consultant?
I was an extra in the movie, and they were doing something, and of course, I don't know how to keep my mouth shut. And I said something, and then somebody goes, "Oh, what do you do?" And I thought he was just one other person like me, but he turned out to be one of the directors. I had no clue who he was. I said, yeah, I do Apache knife fighting. I teach knife fighting. We should do it this way. So that's not realistic. And he goes, oh, wow, tell me more. And that's how I got involved in it. So not only I don't have to be in the movie, people will call me a lot, will call me and ask me, what should they do? Should we set it up this way? It's cheaper for them to ask me over the phone, so just hire me to go to the sets. So that's how that started on the on that part on the night.
And I know, Robin, you work in movies as well for the sheriff's department. Just the department just received some awards for that, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
we got our third Emmy for a short that we did. After I retired from the sheriff's department, I came back as a reserve to work with the video production unit. Because when I first came out here to California, I was in acting. And then I did this long stint where I played the part of the deputy sheriff for 20
Going back to you, Red, talking about the other arts that you've studied, how is the Apache system similar to other arts that you've worked in and studied, and how is it different?
Now you're talking about fighting, or you're talking about with the knife?
Yes?
Okay, because when I took a lot of different martial, sorry, I can't see without my glasses. I have to focus when I see it. When I took all these different styles, there was always nunchucks, there was always the staff. You know, the normal tool weapons people would use is Chinese weapons or Okinawa weapons or Japanese, but not too much of the knife. They'll tell you how to take away a knife, how to defend a knife, and I always would just shake my head and have to do it because it's part of the course and part of the class, especially if you want to pass your test. But nothing was close to Apache knife whatsoever. To me, it didn't seem realistic.
Yeah.
Most of the people have never been in a real knife fight. And what I mean by a real knife fight, I mean more than 5 cuts. I don't mean just one cut. You can't really call that a knife fight. It's more like a scuffle, right? But you never really want to be in a knife fight. And I don't know why everybody has this fantasy of actually knife fighting. You're going to get cut. There's no way you're going to be in a knife fight and not get cut. It doesn't happen. You're going to get cut. Back to your question, of all the styles I took, the only thing I've seen maybe butterfly swords. They call them butterfly knives, but from Wing Chun, yeah. But I have never seen anything close to Apache knife. I mean, I've seen a lot of knife fighters out there on YouTube. I try not to look at them, but I shake my head a lot. There's a lot of good out there. Some people have the right idea. So when I have people come to my class, I say I can make you faster and I can make you better what you already know. So I don't tell them forget what they know, just add it on to your arsenal. Add this on what you already know, and you'll be twice better what you are. And that's pretty much what I do with Robin and all the other guys. I just say add this to it, add this to it. Don't forget what you know, and then use your common sense. Because your common sense will save your life.
And there's a distinct lack of common sense.
I've learned you cannot teach common sense.
That is very true. You had mentioned earlier, Red, that you were in Arkansas and then you moved out to California. Robin, how did you find Red?
Well,
oh no.
Again, a little long story, but I've been researching Native American fighting systems, trying to find out if there was anything out there other than just from history books that I'd read and actual journals from people who had described fighting against the natives. And there was a few people out there, but they were combining it with an Asian art. And I wasn't happy with that. I was just like, well, they were just taking the Asian art and giving it native names. So I had, during my research, I had come across Red's information, and it was like, oh, cool, Apache knife, this would be awesome. Oh, he's out in Arkansas. So I thought, well, me going out there is not going to happen for a while. Years later, I went to the Martial Art History Museum in Burbank. They do these days where they honor certain martial artists and stuff. went out to see a friend who was getting his honor, and
Mark.
And my brain's going blank. She said his name, I forgot his
Mark.
name. Mark. I'll think of it in a minute. So honoring him, and I looked over and I recognized Red from the picture, and I said, "You're Robert Redfeather." And he's like, "Who are you? What are you?" And so.
But he wasn't alone. He had Morgan with him.
Yeah, I had my buddy Morgan with me, and so we immediately, "Can we come take lessons from you?" And he says, "Well, I'm not teaching lessons or anything." "Well, that's okay. You can teach us. We'll come to you. We'll, you know." So it took us a little while.
It did. I thought they were crazy.
But
I always have the attitude, why would you want to know how to knife fight? That's the attitude I have. Why would you learn how to do, why would you want to do that? Yeah.
Mark Lawrence knew it coming eventually. Yeah. So it took a while, but eventually we started training private lessons with him, just Morgan and I, and would meet in a park, and then eventually he moved into another place where there's train in the backyard, and we started doing the seminars with him, and first attending as students and then helping out, and then as the years went by,
4 years later.
4 years later, now Morgan and I are the top step instructors underneath Red and his brother.
They're not bad, even though they're not native. Okay.
Not bad for white guys.
Not bad for white guys. Not bad.
So, and because of that, now he's teaching other people and doing stuff besides just the seminars. And that's why we're talking about actually getting him to open up a school so that we could get even more people, because this is an amazing art and we don't want it to die off or anything.
Which is interesting because the school will be actually called Apache Knife.
Okay.
So instead of me just teaching martial arts, I'll just be teaching the blade, and then these guys will probably be teaching the blade and martial arts. I want to separate it. That's why we don't wear a martial art gi, because that confuses a lot of people. When we do our training, we wear regular clothes, because that's what you're going to be wearing if you're in a scuffle. Right.
Right. I just did a video on military saber, and one of the responses was, "Wow, teaching in boots, that's got to be tough." I wear them all the time.
I would feel comfortable wearing boots, more secure.
In the Patchy arts, you have the knife, but you also mentioned on your website spear, shield, lance, club. Do you teach other tools of the trade?
I do, but I don't want to teach it so people actually learn all the basics of the knife fighting first. That's just another level.
Okay.
If they're with me that long, then I'll teach them that way. But if they haven't been with me that long, then I'm not going to teach. I tried to get rid of these guys, kick them out of the nest for the longest time, but they wouldn't go. I said, "No, you learned everything already. You can do this on your own." But then when Robin comes back, what do you say?
Every time I fight you, you come up with something different. So I know you have a lot more to teach us.
I said, "Yeah, this is true. I do." Because, we haven't really done the axe yet, or the slingshot, or the, the knife and the tomahawk, or the war shield, or the war club. We haven't done none of that yet because the knife's very important. But every weapon's just an extension of your hand. If you can wield one blade, you can wield another blade or another weapon, because they're pretty much all the same except for the weight and the length of the weapon.
Do you travel to do seminars?
I do. A lot of people are sponsored, and I do travel. I've been all the way to Korea, Japan, Tokyo. So it's a lot of fun. Matter of fact, we have a class coming up in October in Illinois. Yeah.
Are you going as well, Robin?
I'm going to try to, because my son is stationed not far from where he's going to have the seminar.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So you teach all these other weapons, but they are after the knife. So you use that as your baseline. You do travel, so that's great to hear. So that gives people the opportunity to study or bring you out if they're unable to make one person a trip to you. But you've also written a book, is that correct?
That's correct. I have. Oh boy, you're quick. He was quick with that book. There's actually two books. The one Robin's got two different names. This one is Apache Knife Fight Like the Wind, and he's got Fight Like the Wind Apache Knife. This one is on Amazon, and this one's on Lulu.
Are they the same book?
It is the same book.
Black and white, color.
The only
All right.
difference is you've got one in color and one in black and white. And everybody likes to buy the one on Amazon because they want color, so the black and white. But if you go under robertredfeather.com, you'll find both books there.
Or Apache-knife.com.
Or that as well, yes, Apache-knife.com. I'm very happy the way it came out for my first book and being very basic, for a beginner book. So I was happy with that. It's more an introduction not only to the knife, but also to my people and history as well, and some personal stories into the book. So the next one will have more personal stories to it as well, and a little bit more into it.
Nice.
This one's going to be the tracking.
Right. Well, I'm doing a book on tracking skills, on combat tracking, from 1808 till 2020.
Oh, it's a big span.
It is, but it's part of the culture, tracking, and also talks about your weapons when you're tracking the enemy as well. What weapons and tools you should have.
Is there a resurgence of the skills and the family and the tribe? Is it coming back?
It is traditional is coming back. We have realized it's anything's a dying art. You being oppressed people, and genocide,
Yeah.
and being separated. After all, the government, we should talk about that, had a campaign of getting rid of the Native Americans, to wipe them all out. And if there was no more Native Americans, there'll be no more reservations, and they wouldn't have to put up with us. But we're still here. We're still thriving, still learning our culture. The language is being lost, but then again, we have our own dictionaries.
Oh, that's
We
great.
have apps on cell phones, on Apples, and they even came out with Star Wars, all in Navajo language.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Pretty cool, watching Star Wars in Navajo.
I bet. I mean, during World War II with the Wind Talkers, it had its own, it started to become something of, wow, this is important. And it's so nice to see that it's coming back and that it's resurging back into the forefront.
This is true. I mean, I'm still learning now, and it's I make it too difficult because I'm trying to learn Mescalero and White Mountain, and then these other Apache language, and I try to blend them together. Sometimes a little Spanish, and then when I tell people I really don't know the language, and then I go to a peyote mean, or I go to somewhere else, the medicine always look at me and go, "You know the language," because they hear me pray.
Right.
Because in the old days, when you greet another native, you wouldn't say your name first. You would say what clan you're from. So you would say your mother's, your grandmother's, your grandfather's clan. And then from hearing their clan and where you're from, they have an idea where in New Mexico, where you're from and who your people are from. Your name would come last.
It's almost as if your people, your family is the more important, because that tells them not just who the family is, that tells them really who you are.
That's correct.
And if you're meeting a girl for the first time, it's important to give the name of your family so that you know if you're
Not from the
related
same clan.
or not.
That's true. You want to hook up.
That's good to know.
Snake. Other terms we won't use, but yeah.
If you could give advice to someone that is starting to work on the techniques of their heritage, their martial heritage, what would a little bit of that advice be?
Don't give up, because you want to know if you would give up. Don't be stubborn. Listen. You're going to take a lot of pain. You're going to take a lot of ridicule. They're going to pick on. They're going to try to push you away. But you have to stick to your guns, stand on your own 2 feet, and keep pushing forward. A lot happens to a lot of white people when they go to Japan. They want to learn their Chirinji Kimpo. They'll say, no, go away. But if you stay there and you keep coming back and you're determined, you got heart. They will teach you. Kind of like what Morgan and Robin did to me. They
Right.
kept hugging me, they kept asking me, and I kept telling them, no, I don't know. And finally I gave in because they had heart. And I said, okay.
Yeah, so and the more you can learn about the culture of whatever system that you're learning, that helps to learn the system because so much, like you talked about earlier,
Yeah,
and the names of things, and it goes into kind of the religion of it and how it developed. The more you can learn about everything about it, the better
right,
understanding you have of why you're doing what you do.
right,
So whether it's like if I'm trying to recreate Welsh fighting, which there's hardly anything on, the more I would understand about the history and the culture around that period of the time and try and put together some writings, the more success I'm going to have rather than just, okay, well, they used a billhook a lot. They used a bow and arrow,
right.
javelin.
I mean, I saw my grandparents in a whole different light by the way they trained because the more, for instance, they would teach me something, it was so easy to learn and so easy to pick up. But the minute they put a name to it, it got harder
Hmm.
because you have to remember the names for each movement. So I said, okay, so if you just learn it, and then they explain the story and then the name behind it, then your mind just goes, oh, okay, I realize what's going on now. But when I first started Apache Knife, I had a lot of people throwing stones at me. There's no such thing. There's no such thing through history. Apaches didn't use the knife. You know, when did they use the knife? You know, they would talk about the cowboy days, or they would talk about this and that. Even my own people sometimes would say something, and then once they did their own homework, then they realize, yes, this man is right. He's doing this. There's some merit to it. You know.
I think, and this is my idea, is that I think that the martial heritage of any culture tells you a lot about that culture because the the military, the combat, is not a standalone thing.
Mhm.
It's not this bubble that's all by itself. Um, and the culture is not about combat. That's just a part of it. It's like Robin, you and I had a conversation about clothing in movies or holding a gun in movies. And I think this is true because, you know, if you are wearing 1970s era bell-bottom trousers in 2020, it doesn't make sense. But it's important that we understand how that was a part of 1976. And I think that's true with martial too. And if the martial history isn't maintained like the other history, we lose a good chunk of whatever it was of that culture.
What made it the way that it does? We talked
Yeah,
about how like the difference between northern Chinese systems and southern Chinese systems because northern you got a lot of snow and
right,
ice,
right.
and
Yeah.
the southern it's warmer and everything. So they develop differently depending on the terrain and the weather.
There were so many people upset with me when I first started teaching because they didn't want me to teach the public. There's so many natives who know how to knife fight, but they don't advertise, they don't commercialize it. It's a family art, or everybody has it a different way. There's no set way. You know, there's different names and different blessings. So they just said this could be used against us, and I kind of smirk and I go, that's kind of like what Bruce Lee went through with his own people, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what somebody told me, um, kind of a similar kind of, you know, and I didn't believe them until I got a couple of phone calls from certain people about not teaching, you know, and then they were upset about when I did a trademark on Apache knife, a trademark on that. He said, well, nobody should own that trademark. I go, well, if we don't do it, you're going to have some white person do it.
Yeah.
Or should I say Caucasian? Caucasian, right? Yeah, cowboy. You're going to have some cowboy, you know, get it registered trademark. Why not? Why not me? Somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, going back to what you said earlier, I am glad that you persevered and you pushed through to continue doing this.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Now, I have one last question for you.
Sure.
And this will be for each of you. I'd like to get from both of you. If you could meet your 14-year-old self, Red, what advice would you give to that 14-year-old Red? And Robin, what advice would you give to 14-year-old Robin?
Well, if I could go back in time and talk to my 14-year-old self, yeah, there's a number of things that I would tell myself to stay away from so I wouldn't get myself into trouble and cause my mom to move to a different state. There are martial arts. I was living in Hawaii at the time, so there are certain martial arts that I didn't even know about that were there that I would love to have been studying. I started when I was 12 in Hawaii. We had a guy at church, big Hawaiian guy, that was teaching traditional karate from his carpet. And he had carpet wrapped around a coconut tree that would be used as a makiwara board. And so definitely would have urged myself to do that, and the usual things. Be better at your studies in school and don't waste so much time with your friends.
Great. And for this, I do want to narrow it down, I guess, because that's saner, to what advice would you give yourself if you about martial arts, about studying different things, or what you find is an important lesson for you, because that'll most likely be an important lesson for someone else.
I see. It's kind of hard to answer that because I think everything I did, I would just do it again because I like the way I was training at that age. I like the things I was doing. I like the attitude of having one day at a time. I like the bad experience I've had because it's a teaching tool. If you don't change, you'd be walking backwards your whole life instead of walking forward. So I still have the same attitude even today, one day at a time, looking forward instead of looking behind.
That's very good. Yeah. Gentlemen, this has been amazing.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me and everybody watching this video. It's been great. And like I said earlier, I've had the opportunity to stay at Robin's house and get to know Robin. And it's been wonderful to get to know you as well, Red. And I look forward to much more in the future.
Thank you very much. Until we see you again. Thank you.
Thank you for everything. You gentlemen stay safe. Stay sane as much as possible. And I look forward
the virus
to with you on the other side of this.
Thank you, sir.
Sounds
Take
good.
care.
Thanks. Take care. That was fantastic. It was so interesting to hear about the heritage of the Apache tribe. Thanks for sharing with us today, Red. If you liked what you saw today, please hit the subscribe button and the notification icon. Get up-to-date notifications of all the new videos we have coming out in the pandemic interview series, as well as the classes that we're teaching on the use of different weapons and systems in the European tradition